Man, it's good to be back. Good to see you guys. Welcome. Appreciate you guys coming. It's always a good turnout. You always come and to see me. You fill these seats. It's just really cool. So I appreciate y'all being so kind to me. It's been a wet, kind of cold, dreary, drizzly day. I don't know if you noticed. But it was one of those that you just kind of want to crawl back in bed and just kind of hang out and, not think or not do anything and just kind of sleep. Have you ever had those days? I have those kind of days too. And people think that you may not, they look at me and they think I don't have those kind of days. And I'm like, well, yeah, I have those kind of days, Who does not have those kind of days? I think we're geared more toward rest than we are towards work. Did you know that? That's okay. That's part of the design. We're supposed to rest and relish and enjoy that rest. That's really the most important thing, I think. Now, we got it turned around in this culture, at least, because we put all the emphasis on work. Now, work is important, and a good work ethic is very important, okay, but I don't think it's as important as rest. I'll tell you why I think that. A couple of reasons. If the Creator summed everything up after all of that time of creating, and he looked at it and he said it was good and it was very good, and then the next thing that happened was he rested. So if the Creator values rest and puts an importance on it, I think it's okay for us to do the same, And I don't think I'm going to listen to all the propaganda of people telling me I'm lazy when I need to rest. Because that's just not true. Not lazy. I'm just like the Creator. Need to rest. Okay, and it's important. Another interesting thing of that story, and I reference the creation story a lot. I don't know if you realize that, but those of you who have been with me for a while, anybody new since last week?
Yeah.
Welcome. Hey, my name's Klay, and sorry you're getting me on your first round of a week, but hang in there. It's going to be okay. The interesting thing also is, in that narrative, that biblical narrative where it talks about the first day, and then at the end it says there was an evening and a morning of day one or day two. Do you remember that? Evening and morning. Anything strike you odd about that? Our weird culture, we think you would start where? In the morning. We would say, because we're backwards and incorrect most of the time, we would say morning and evening of the first day. The reason we do that is because the propaganda has told us that the most important part is the work. So you work in the morning to the evening, but really the author of life, the Creator, put the emphasis where? Evening to morning. So what comes first? What's primary? What's more important? Rest. Isn't that cool? That's really cool. And in the Jewish culture, the day actually started at 6 o'clock in the evening. Did you know that? That's how they kept time. So from 6 o'clock, okay, until the evening, it was the beginning of the new day. Sounds weird to us. So basically, we're 35 minutes in to Thursday. If we lived back in that day and time, right? It's Thursday morning. And we go, no, it's really Wednesday night, but no, it's actually Thursday morning. That's just a little interesting idea, but it strikes me as significant that the narrative, the biblical narrative, emphasizes the evening to morning and highlights the rest. And all of that emerged because it was rainy today, and I wanted to crawl into the bed and then stay there. I don't know. That's just what came to my mind. I hope you're doing well. I hope this finds you in a place where you feel safe, okay, where you feel like there's rest and work going on. You feel like you're in a process. You feel like there's progress, and I hope that you feel like that you are wrestling. And if you are wrestling, then you are properly related to the process that you are engaged in, because you should be wrestling. That's not a bad thing. Last week, do you remember me talking about the distinction between confusion and just not knowing? Do you remember that? You're kind to say yes even when you don't. I get that, because that's what we do, in class, you say that. But yeah, we talked about not knowing is simply not knowing, not being able to tell the future, not knowing what tonight brings or what tomorrow or the next day, what the end of the process looks like. That's just not knowing, but it's not confusion. Confusion is confusion. Remember, I'm not confused about the fact that I don't know. And so that's an okay place to be. But what that does is it pushes me to wrestle. And I want you to know that that's okay. That is part of the process. One of the things you may notice that when I get off of the stuff, my head, the fog kind of clears. Kind of good and bad, right? Because when the fog clears, I think a little more clearly. But if you're like me, I think too much. Do you think too much? I'm like thinking all the time. I can't stop thinking. I don't like what I'm thinking. That's part of the wrestling. I don't like what I'm thinking. I don't want to think. Ooh, now I'm getting dangerously close to that solution that is actually the problem. Because I know how to not think. I know what to do in order to temporarily escape, right? It's easy. The path of least resistance. But when you're off the stuff and your head clears, you will find yourself beginning to think more, and that's kind of uncomfortable sometimes because stuff begins to emerge. It's the stuff that I've worked really hard at pushing down and pushing back. And for a while I can kind of hold it there, but starts popping back up. It would be like getting in the pool and trying to hold like 5 volleyballs under the water. That is hard work. I might get 5 volleyballs under the water for a little bit, but then one little wrong move, and then it's like, what happens? One pops up, and I'm like trying to get that one, and the other one pops up, and then I'm like dancing in the pool, okay, trying to keep these volleyballs under the water, and it's hard. It takes all of my effort, and I get tired, and just all 5 go, they're all up there. That's what it's like trying to control what you're thinking at these times. I just want to encourage you before we get started, before I think of something to say. I want to encourage you as you're redirecting your thought process. I want to remind you that you really don't control what you're thinking any more than you can control what you're feeling. I respond to what I'm feeling, and I have a way that I can respond to what I'm thinking. So I'm going to share that with you just a little bit. Ideas, that help me redirect, my thinking. Because your thinking will drive you crazy. If you wrestle with it too long or you sit with it too long, it will discourage you and kind of drive you crazy if you're not careful. So, what in the world? How do I redirect this thinking? Well, I'll have you try something. First of all, don't get discouraged that the fact that you're human. And our brains do that. They just do that. My brain, is the organic thing inside the skull, but my mind is something bigger than that. My mind is like it has no boundaries. Where does it start? Where does it finish? I don't know. It's part of my body, part of my emotional system, my mental system. Okay, all of that stuff works together. It's my mind. That's why when it gets really bad, I say, I'm out of my mind. We don't even know what that is. We don't even know where that is. But it seems to fit because I'm out of it. Very few times do you run across somebody that's kind of struggling and they go, oh my gosh, I'm out of my body. I've felt out of my body before, but that's not how we reference things. We say I'm out of my mind, and it's this thinking that really gets haywire. You know what I mean? So I want you to know that your brain cannot register the little word that's called not. N-O-T. Not K-N-O-T. N-O-T. Just not. Or not N-A-U-G-H-T. What kind of language gives 3 spellings to 1 sound?
English.
Isn't that stupid? They wonder why we struggle. Not that we should be talking about a knot, when we're talking about not, but the brain cannot identify that concept. Let me show you how. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to get with me, work this real hard. Whatever you do in the next 10 seconds, I do not want you to think about a zebra. You shall not think about a zebra. Well, what you discover is in my attempt to not think about a zebra, the only image I have is a zebra. It's impossible to not think about any abstraction. Are you with me? Yes. You can't do it. It's an impossibility. Well, let me ask you this question. Have you ever spent any mental energy on trying to not think about something?
Yes. A lot.
Crazy. We're stinking crazy. Because all the effort that goes into not thinking about something, I'm actually thinking about it. And I trick myself into believing that because I insert that little knot there, that I'm somehow going to make progress. But I don't. Because the whole time I'm trying to fool myself into not thinking, I'm actually thinking. You ever thought about not using? You ever been determined to not use? I'm going to concentrate. I am putting my mind to it. By gosh, I am not going to use today. We've all been there, haven't we? I'm not going to use today. I don't know what's going to happen today, but I tell you right now, I'm not going to use. I ain't going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to put my mind to it, and I'm thinking, I'm not going to use, I'm not going to use, I'm not going to use. But in reality, what's occurring? Well, I may pull that off occasionally, like once every blue moon, but the whole day my mind is literally focused on what? On using. And we're not aware that the not does not count. So it's very discouraging and very frustrating because the intent is real. The effort is real, isn't it? My heart is true. My motive is to do that, but it just doesn't happen. The brain doesn't work that way. You cannot redirect your thinking by using the word not. So if the zebra is representing that which I do not want to participate in, what do I do with my thinking? How do I redirect my thinking? What I do, instead of going, I'm not going to think about a zebra, I go, today I am going to think about an eagle. Today I'm thinking about an eagle. I want to know, what does the eagle look like? What does the eagle smell like? What does the eagle sound like? Where's the eagle? I want to watch the eagle fly. I'm going to think about an eagle. Or a lion, or a rhino, or a hippo, or a motorcycle, or it don't matter what it is, right? I just staying away from the zebra. But the funny thing is the zebra is real tenacious. Because I'll be thinking about an eagle, and you know what comes into my peripheral vision? A friggin' zebra. And so now I'm watching the eagle, but I see the zebra. So it can't perfectly be done. So I'm telling you though, when out of my peripheral vision, when I see the zebra, I'm like, no, eagle, 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 eagle. I mean, I have to really redirect my thinking towards something that I want to be or become. You with me? Yes. I redirect my thinking and my aim towards something that I want to be or become. And I do not look at what the mistake that I think I am or what I've done. Those don't go anywhere, but they're not salient to my recovery. What I think I am today may or may not be correct. What I've done is just what I've done. I don't make corrective measures by concentrating or focusing on what I've done. Redirect your thinking towards what you want to be or what you want to become. And don't get angry at yourself for your starting point, because you cannot get rid of your starting point. That's wherever we start from is where we start from. It's okay. You can't eliminate a starting point, okay, if you want to have a journey. You can't have a journey without a starting point. And it seems like a starting point gets discouraging because it's like, I never get off the line. It's like I'm stuck here. No, you're not. Just seems that way. So keep on redirecting and looking towards that eagle, right? And that's how we redirect, okay, what we're thinking. I ran across another story. I think it might be interesting. You've heard this. It's out of the book, The Biblical Narrative. We talk a lot about creation and the fall and all of that stuff, but shortly after all of that, and I'm going to remind you, those stories are poetry, right? They're books of poetry. Okay? It's not a history book. It's not lined out, chronologically about this and this and this happened. In fact, I think I've said this to you, but the Western mind, what we're all educated in, always looks and interacts with the Bible as through the lens of what and how. Have I said this before? Okay, good. Something new. Okay, on the what and how. That's what we're trained to look at. What happened, how it happened, and then we probably throw in a when it happened. And that's the lens that we look at those scriptures, and I'm sorry to say that's incorrect. It's not how it was written. It was not written with any emphasis on the what or the how or the when. The emphasis in Mideastern literature, the writing to that ancient people at that ancient time, in the style of literature that they wrote in, the lens was the who and the why. Last week we established the who. Remember, we talked about there is a God. That's it, as far as you go. Really, if that was the only thing you could read in the Bible, you'd be fine. Those first few words. In the beginning, God. And stop right there. You can stop right there. In the beginning, God. That is enough for us. Now we can go on and look through that poetry and get all kinds of fascinating, beautiful lessons, and that's what we're going to build upon, this evening. Maybe it sparks a question, maybe not, but after all of that interaction with the creation, and we get down and it's post-fall, right? We're out in the wasteland, out of paradise. We're tilling the ground, we're working the soil, we got labor with childbirth, we got other aspects of the curse that are occurring. Okay, and the narrative says that Adam and Eve did what husbands and wives do, and then she had a son. You remember this story, but maybe not, we hadn't talked about it enough. She had a son, and his name was Cain. Cain was the firstborn. Cain in the Hebrew language means something like acquired. And so, in the narrative, if you look at it, it says that Eve said that through the help of God, okay, I have been given or I acquired a son. And so the idea, especially in those days, names meant something. Names went with identity. They were pretty important. Our names in this culture sometimes mean that, but a lot of times don't. But Cain, the acquisition, acquiring, attaining something you were given, okay, like an inheritance. And so the firstborn, that was his name. A little bit later, they conceived again, and they had another son, and his name was Abel. Have you ever known anybody, side note, have you ever known anybody that was named Abel? I've known a couple of people that were named Abel. It's not real common. It's not unusual to not know anybody by that, but I've heard of that. Have you ever heard of anybody named Cain? First name. Last name, yes. First name, interesting. You know some, yeah. How about Jezebel? I've been called Jezebel. Well, I haven't, but people would call you Jezebel. But I don't know anybody that named their kid Jezebel or Judas. I don't know anybody that name, given that name. Anyway, names meant something. Cain is on the scene. Abel is on the scene. And the interesting part about the story is it said that Cain, okay, works the ground. He tills the ground, he tills the soil. He is a farmer. He is a grower of whatever it is we can grow there. Abel, it says, tended flocks. So it's just an interesting idea about what they do. And then the story takes a funny little turn. It kind of skips in a way, like poems do. And it goes straight to one day Cain and Abel were offering what? Sacrifice. There's been no mention of the idea of sacrifice. There's been no instruction to give sacrifice. It's not in the narrative. We don't really know where it came from. Nothing really about it. It just says they're doing it. And come to find out that Cain brings some grain offerings and stuff from the land, and that Abel brings, first fruits of the flock. And the sacrifices were made, and the only real thing that was said at that moment was that Abel's sacrifice pleased God more. That's all it says. Now, what do you assume from that? There's a lot of directions we could go, right? We can invent meaning to it, but what's really said is the simplicity of Abel's was what? Better. At least better, in a sense, that it pleased God more. What's really noticeably absent from the commentary about Cain's offering? See if you ever thought of it in this way. Did the Creator condemn it? Did he criticize it? Did he say anything necessarily negative about Cain's offering? It's not in the narrative, if he did. He simply said he liked Abel's better. And I think this is significant, and I'm going to tell you why, and why it might make application to us, and we can draw stories from that. Maybe the Creator understood the heart of Cain and Abel, and that's what was happening, but that we don't really know that. We can infer that. We can make that up, but that's not stated in the narrative, which means it's not really the point of the story. It's just part of the story. If you think about what does Cain do? Cain is acutely aware of the dependence upon God. He farms. He farms. Do you know anybody that farms? I know a few people that farm. I know some people that farm here. You have an awareness of dependence upon the Great Spirit that it's at a higher level than a lot of people. You know why? Because you can't make it rain. You can't do anything about it raining. You do the best job you can to time up, when you're supposed to plant and plow and harvest and all of that stuff. You do the best you can, but you are categorically out of control. Completely dependent. Cain was aware of how dependent he was on God. You with me? Keenly aware. And when this occurred, I offer for your consideration, there was one of those moments like, uh-oh. God's happier what? He's happier with my brother. What does that mean for me? What's that going to mean for me? Because his mistake was there's probably a limited amount of favor when it comes to the Creator. Think about that. There's a limited amount of favor that goes along with the Creator. And all of a sudden, I was competing with my brother, and I what? I lost. Am I losing favor with God? Does He like me less? What is that going to mean for all of this stuff that I have to do? How am I going to survive if the Creator if God sees me lower than my brother? Did God ever say anything like that? Did he ever say, I value you less now, Cain, because of this offering? Never. Now I'm foreshadowing what's actually maybe going on. Where does that come from? Within inside of Cain. You know kind of the rest of the story. Well, maybe you don't. I'm gonna tell you anyway. The kind of the rest of the story. After that occurred, God interacts with Cain some way, and he goes, Cain, what's the deal? Why is your countenance down? Why is your face down? Why are you sad? Why are you upset? What's going on? And there's not a real clear answer, but there's a notice that God notices. And the instruction, basically came to Cain that there's a beast that's at the foot of the door. Now, it's not a real door, and it's probably not a real beast because it's poetry. But you know what I mean. There's a beast at the door, and its desire is to devour you, to overtake you. That beast at the door, if you let that in, it can overtake you. Now that beast at the door sits on top of a mat. I'm making this up. Sits on top of a mat, of fear and shame. Fear and shame. You see, when that occurred, I think Cain experienced the same kind of fear and shame that we have, that we do. Fear and shame, I believe, is like the birthplace of most of all of this stuff we call sin and bad choices. Fear and shame. It's the culprit. It's the enemy. It's part of the beast. It's that which we must, through this transitional help of the Spirit of God, it's that we must tame. That fear and shame. Because it was crouching at the door, and it did, and Cain's choices, did not work out all that good, did they? Him and his brother went to the field, they got separated, and in a moment that he gave over to his desire to be better, his desire to control, his overwhelming fear, his shame of what happened with the sacrifice. I don't know exactly what it was, but Cain did what? Killed Abel. He made that choice. Cain made the choice to do that. The aim, the path that he chose, he gave in to fear and shame and the beast, as it's kind of notified. Now later on he comes back, hey Cain, where is your brother? I don't know. We remember those parts. I don't know, my brother's keeper. And it's like, well, I'm going to tell you, his blood is crying out to me from the ground. He says, you've killed him. What have you done? Why have you done this? They didn't have an answer if you follow the story. Because of this, you and your descendants will wander. You will not farm anymore. You will be nomadic. You will wander. You will not really have a place. And we're putting a mark on your head, which I have no idea if it was actually a mark or not. I don't even know if this is a person or not, to be honest with you. It's a story about the archetype of a person. I know that because I can take the path of Cain, okay, or the path of Abel, as short-lived as his life maybe was, and I can descend and go farther down that path, giving into the desires that emerge from the beast of fear and shame, because, as you know, once I start lying, what do? You got to keep lying. And we ride that horse until it's dead, and we're sitting on a dead horse, kicking that dead horse and still lying, and there, by that time everybody's like, you lie when the truth sounds better. Did you ever get that one? I got that one before. You lie when the truth is better. I go, well, that ain't very smart. Cain and Abel, the story, I believe, is about that fear and shame, but the to-do part of it is we always have a chance to do the next right thing. See, it's not really about the sin that was in the world or the problem of the sacrifice. Cain always, all the way up to the end, still could have done the next right thing. And so we're called in situations in life when we butt up against the beast of fear and shame. I'm offering for your consideration that I can still do the next right thing. The next right thing is not always the answer to the riddle. You with me? The next right thing doesn't finish the problem. The next right thing doesn't always clear up my mind. But the next right thing is simply the next right thing. It may be the tiniest step, but it's the right thing. The next right thing may be keeping my mouth shut. The next right thing might be opening my mouth. The next right thing might be going this way, it might be going this way, might be going... The next right thing is never necessarily mapped out on the piece of paper. The next right thing emerges from where? You remember that still small voice? That still small voice that's part of the image of the Creator. The next right thing emerges from there. Even if the next right thing is freeze. Don't do anything. When you don't know what to do, it's okay to not do anything. Nothing wrong with that. We've said many a time, we've said it a bunch of times actually. You don't live in the not doing anything for very long, but do you see what I'm saying? The next right thing is the tiniest of moves. The next right thing leads to the next right thing, which leads to the next right thing. Are you picking up the pattern? Which leads to the next right thing. And if I go a whole day of that, I might have moved an inch. But it don't matter. If it's a millimeter or an inch or a foot or a mile, it doesn't matter. Because what matters is the next right thing. That's all that matters. You see, the story, I believe, is about that opportunity to do the next right thing or give in to the desire that's fed by fear and shame. And the challenge is, if I give in to that desire fed by fear and shame, it like sets up a pattern in the same way that doing the next right thing does. You with me? And before long, if I'm down that path, if I follow the path of Cain, It gets real hard to hear the still small voice. And the next right thing is almost invisible. Because I'm locked into myself. My thinking is totally about what am I going to do? How am I going to get it? How am I going to get out of it? How am I, you follow me? We understand how that path goes. The next right thing, though, is more like when he called Abram out of his home, like we talked about last week. He says, Abram, pack your stuff up. We're heading out. Where are we going? Don't worry about it. You just follow. You just follow me. So that spirit of adventure, I don't know if you remember that. I don't know if we talked about it that much. But the Creator is creative, is a call to adventure, is an element of sacrifice. Okay, and from day one, the evening and the morning of day one, it has always been simply follow me. If you follow me, you'll have no real understanding, but you will be doing the next right thing. That creative spirit, remember, was too much for us to encounter face to face. We cannot survive a direct encounter with absolute truth. We can't survive. The book says, God says when he was talking to, it was Moses, by this time the story advanced, right? We're already up through all of that. And it's like, I need to see you face to face so I can tell these people I'm legit. And he said, you ain't tell them that, you just tell them I am. That's good enough, they'll get it. No, we got to have some kind of proof, some kind of evidence. Well, so Moses wrestles with the Creator. Can you see this in your mind's eye? It's fascinating to me. He wrestles with him, and finally, so God says, okay, this is what we're going to do. You get in the crack of this rock. Have you ever heard, you remember a song? There's a song that's called, or some line in there, the cleft of the rock. I don't know that one very good. Last week, remember, I had a song. But this one I know, there's that part in there, the cleft of the rock. It says, you get it, it's a crack, is what it is. Crack in the rock, It says, you get in there and you back in there, and I'm going to come past you. Do you remember this story? Have y'all read this story? It's fascinating stuff. I'm going to walk past you, and I'm going to put my hand over that crack. So you won't be burnt up, I guess. So it won't kill you. And God said, I'm going to put my hand over that crack, and I'm going to pass by you, and I'm going to remove my hand. And you can see me going, but you can't see me coming. But you can look at my back, and you will know what to follow. See, it's always been the intent of the Great Spirit to show us the next right thing. And that's where it comes from, that image. He set up a way in which we could follow. Well, if you kind of remember the story, that was good, but we got to have some commandments, and then we got to make some rules, and then we got to add to the rules, and then we create churches, and then we create religions, and now we got a stinking mess. That's what we got. And we got books and books and books of rules and regulations and all of that thing, which are trying to tell us what the next right thing is, but it's out of order and improper. Because we weren't put here to follow a rule book. So if you fast forward all the way through, and we're connecting some of these ideas much later in time, the Great Spirit sent a piece of himself to come here and to be sacrificed. Eventually, we know that, or we believe that. Our faith informs us about that. But man, how fascinating was that? Because we could not encounter God face to face. We could not see him coming. We could only see him going. So Jesus came so we could actually what? We could see Jesus coming and going. And he came and he said, I've fulfilled all of this stuff that they've written and stuff. You don't need to do that again. I freed you from that. Again, he said, you just follow. You just follow me. But now you've got a better relationship. You can see me coming. You can see my face. You can see how we interact. The next right thing. I've shown you, that you can do the next right thing. It's possible. It's possible because it's not that complicated. The next right thing is not. It's small, it's tiny. Follow me, do the next right thing. Now, you might get sacrificed for it. Don't worry about that. Don't you be scared about that. Because where we're going, all of this can't hold a candle. Can't hold a candle to this. Where we're going, in coach speak, that is D1. We're going to the top. That's national championship, D1 stuff. It's good as it gets. This world is not our home. We're headed home. So you do the next right thing, and if it costs you your life, you're in good company. Because that's what they did to me. And I think we learned that beginnings from those two brothers. Cain took that path, and then the lineage of Jesus Christ, who actually came from Seth, the next child born. Okay, but the different path, right? The next right thing. My hope and my prayer is that while you are on this adventure, this particular adventure, which is one of hundreds of adventures that you will have in your life, and while you are on this one, you take that next right step. And when it gets pretty difficult, I want you to be thinking about that eagle. Okay? As usual, y'all are way too kind and good. Freedom Talk, we're glad you're with us. Thank you for joining us. Hit your like, share, send, delete, not delete. Whatever, you punch on that, come back and be with us. We appreciate your attendance here at John 3:17.